The Second World War still holds our imaginations. It's the Nazis and Hitler, of course. It's receding in time, but not in our folk memories. So, how does the passage of time affect our view of the war today? How much do we actually know? And do we only know from that which we see on the screen? Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Germany went further.
As the 1930s approached their end, so did the times of peace for the people of Europe. One nation, however, would bear the brunt of the war to come, plagued by tensions with its neighbour. In 1938, in an attempt to appease the soon-to-be enemy of the free world, Adolf Hitler, representatives from France and Britain met with their counterparts from Germany and Italy, who would soon set their alliance in stone through the Pact of Steel. Still haunted by the devastation of World War I, Paris and London decided to sacrifice Czechoslovakia to the ambitions of Hitler, whose forces began their occupation of the country that same year. Warsaw, a witness to the West's abandonment of Prague, began doubting its allies' pledges of mutual defense. By summer of 1939, the air in Poland grew heavy with dread. Despite having rebuilt itself after 123 years of partitions, the shadow of yet another war loomed over Poland. Headlines from Berlin carrying words of reunification and Lebensraum struck fear into the hearts of the Poles, who had fought so hard to win their independence. In a final bid to find peace ahead of the storm to come, Poland's ambassador to Nazi Germany, Józef Lipski, met with German officials. Berlin demanded concessions over the port city of Danzig and the Polish corridor that connected the country to the Baltic Sea, simultaneously making East Prussia an exclave of Nazi Germany. Warsaw chose not to bend the knee to Adolf Hitler. Their decision, however, would be repaid by Berlin in blood, lead, and fire on September 1st.
I'm delighted to be joined by our guest today, Professor Władysław Bułhak from the Institute of National Remembrance and specifically its Historical Research Office. Welcome to the programme.
Hello everybody, welcome.
Great to see you. We'll go straight into the immediate causes of the Second World War, the immediate causes of the German invasion in 1939. What were the particular set of factors that caused so much animosity from Germany towards Poland, in a way that it didn't seem to do to the rest of Europe?
Okay, this is a complicated question and it's very hard to answer. Actually, the British were responsible in the short time. Because they gave us support when the direct problems, the direct risk of the German invasion of Poland was starting to be a next problem in Europe after the collapse of Czechoslovakia, after the effects of the Munich agreements, and then later the situation created by Hitler when he immediately actually broke the agreement and took all the Czechoslovakia and also created his Slovakian puppet state. So it was the situation when Poland, which was not theoretically on the list of the main enemies of Germany, we have a non-aggression agreement with Germany. The Germans were quite polite until this moment because they all the time have an idea of going maybe together with Poland against Soviets, against the communists. So it was something that Hitler had in mind but from his perspective, the Poles, in a sense, decided to go not with him, but with the West. So from this point on, we were the enemy.
Was that an option for Poland to join Germany?
Some people think that there was such an option, but we know also from the intelligence sources, that actually the Germans in the long run have no idea to cooperate with Poles, but to make from the Poles the next puppet state after Slovakia, or some maybe bigger, but basically in the same position in this German system in Eastern Europe, or Mitteleuropa in German. So it wasn't an option. If you can go to the reports of the German defector from 1936, named Eberhard Löwe, who defected from the German officer, and he already, in his report to the Poles, he said all the things that happens actually, that in the short run they be very polite to you, but in the long run they want to take your territories, the territories which belong to Poland, not only Gdańsk, Danzig in German, or not only Silesia, but everything that Germany lost due to the effects of the First World War.
Yeah, so was it the Versailles Treaty which was the underlying cause, the underlying spirit of this?
Certainly, many historians see the deepest roots of the Second World War simply in the not fully finished, in a sense, First World War, when Germany were actually not fully defeated. They have no surrendered unconditionally, as they were forced after the Second World War, but okay, they made a kind of agreement. They lost the fleet, yes. They lost, many things. They lost territories to Poland and other countries, but still they were empire and were treated as such.
We'll come on to this idea of the partly finished First World War in the second half of our discussion. But continuing this theme about the British participation, why were the British panicked into giving this guarantee to Poland after Munich?
It was the discussion of Neville Chamberlain and his role in history. He's usually, and I think quite rightly, described as a person who was responsible to these appeasement policies towards Germany. One of the most important people who actually created the whole policy, but at the same time he was supported by the British people at the time. They are very, very happy about it, that he somehow solved in 1938 the whole situation in Europe. It was on the verge of war, and he avoided that. On the cost of others, certainly, but it happens, and we also now are seeing it in Ukraine, more or less. But let us stick to the historical problems and things. But he was also very angry when Hitler actually, after just a few months, broke these basic rules imposed by the Munich Agreement, and he actually invaded the proper Czech Czechoslovakia, destroyed the country, and also took arms, munitions, tanks,
the
planes, because we have to remember that Czechoslovakia earlier was a kind of a strategic place for the Austro-Hungarian Empire and produced the arms for Austro-Hungarian Empire. So Hitler now actually can have on his disposal not only the huge German industry, but also what was most important in the former Austro-Hungarian industries, which were actually in Austria and later in Czechoslovakia.
It's one of these what-if questions that I suppose historians shouldn't go into.
We actually did not like it too much.
No.
Questions, but
At the time itself, was there a will to fight or a will not to fight, generally speaking? For example, let's take Poland. Did Poland wish to avoid war and join Polish public opinion, if we can gauge it in some way? Was there a will to keep this appeasement going or not? How do you see that?
Actually, the Poles were, eager. Okay, we have to go back to the famous speech of our foreign minister, Józef Beck, who said that there is something which is more important than peace and everything to Poles. It is the honor. It means that we will fight. But at the same time, Hitler was a gambler, and Beck was a gambler too in this situation. And certainly Hitler has a stronger cards in this situation because he had these millions of rounds of ammunition, his own and newly robbed from the Czechs.
Yeah.
And we have munition for few weeks of fighting. So Poland was a much weaker partner in this fight, and our goal was actually not to win the war. Our goal was to internationalize the conflict, to make it a world war. So this was the main and strategic goal of the Polish policy, and we did it.
And we'll come on to that after we see our second clip.
In the early morning hours, on September 1st, 1939, Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The storm had arrived, bringing with it death and destruction. The Germans moved quick, too quick for the Polish forces to handle. A strategy later dubbed Blitzkrieg. The rapid, mechanized assault tore through the Polish defenses. The skies were darkened by German aircraft, dropping bombs on everything below. Within 27 days, the country's capital of Warsaw fell to the Germans. The Nazi German invasion of Poland was not just a military invasion. It was the first step towards Adolf Hitler's vision of Lebensraum, living space for Germans that had to be cleared out of its previous inhabitants. But trouble didn't come from just the West. Poland's eastern neighbor, the Soviet Union, launched their own invasion of the country just 16 days after the Germans, on September 17th. By early October, Poland had been carved up by two hungry superpowers, once again erased from the map. The joint assault on Poland was agreed upon by Berlin and Moscow in a secret clause inside the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, which on the surface presented itself as nothing more than a non-aggression treaty between Hitler and Joseph Stalin. For the next 6 years of war, the Poles endured brutal repression, mass executions, deportations to Soviet camps in Siberia, and worst of all, the Holocaust. 1940 brought the downfall of Poland's leadership class through the Katyń massacre. Over 20,000 Polish officers, intellectuals, and officials were executed by Soviet forces, often with a shot to the back of their heads. In 1944, Poles in the country's capital, Warsaw, would attempt to free their beloved city from the clutches of Nazi Germany. That effort, while brave and valiant, was ineffective, leaving the city in ruins and its population cold. While the war ended in 1945, the plight of the Polish people did not. Immediately after the Second World War's end, Poland fell into the Soviet sphere of influence, trapped under a puppet communist government for decades to come.
You said that the Polish policy was to internationalize the conflict, which is, I suppose, what weaker nations try and do when faced with odds against them. This didn't quite. This may have succeeded in getting Britain and France to declare war, but then what happened? Not much. So in one way, it succeeded. In another way, it failed.
Yes, and this is a huge discussion if the Brits and French actually betrayed Poland or not. And this is also one of those huge questions that are easy to answer, because in a direct sense, it's a short-term sense, that certainly betrayed because they promised to do more. But actually, the most important things they can do was simply declare the war and declare also that at the end of the war, the Polish problem will be solved in the favor of Poles. So actually, our role in this situation is first to fight and then wait for the victory.
Playing the longer game.
Yeah, playing the longer game.
You mentioned in the first half of our discussion about this partially finished First World War. At the time, was it the Second World War, or did the opinion formers, media, did they think, well, this is just the next second act of the First World War, the Great War?
Yes.
When did it become the Second World War?
Yeah, okay, this is a huge discussion when actually the war started, when it actually
yes, exactly.
finished. So we have some agreements, we have some kind of important meetings, but actually also during the interwar period there were books published for coming Second World War or coming the next big war, because the war was also called as Great War or Big
Yes.
War, so not necessarily first, because the people actually didn't know that it will be the second.
Well, that's right. How do you
Compartmentalize
all this stuff?
For example, as far as I remember, one of the Polish intellectuals, by the way, pro-German, Władysław Studnicki, wrote the brochure or something, a booklet called "The Coming of the Second World War," something like that. I don't remember the precise title of this booklet, but still we have huge questions, because when we are looking from the Polish perspective, it's certainly the Second World War. But when we are looking from the perspective of Chinese, for example, or I don't know whom,
the European war far away.
Yeah, but there were also countries that are actually looking or watching the whole stuff from the safe distance, like for example Argentinians. So for them, I don't know if it's important or not.
How is modern Poland? We'll skip right through the Second World War. We know what happened, the tragedy of Poland and Eastern Europe in particular, here in Europe. How does modern Polish historiography treat the Second World War? Does it still focus its attention on the Polish experience, or is it broadening its view out?
Oh, it depends, as always, because there are different historians.
Yeah.
But I think that most of us are still more focused on Polish experience, because we are Poles.
Quite rightly, yeah. And does this mean that, for example, the idea of German aggression, Soviet aggression, that's the main factor, that the two great powers fighting over Eastern Europe, that's the main motif of the of the war as viewed by the Poles?
Yes, this is definitely this is the main idea of two enemies, and this is how we see actually as Poles this huge conflict. But certainly, from the perspective of a historian, we should also look at this not only as a conflict in East Central Europe, which is just a part of the biggest story about many things. For example, the Americans replacing the Brits as the biggest empire of the world.
Oh, yes.
Which was probably the most important effect of the Second World War.
Yes, they were the big winners, weren't they?
Yeah, so actually, this, from our perspective, it was Stalin who won. And we used to look at Roosevelt as somebody, okay, weak and stupid. But actually, it was Roosevelt who won, who took the biggest,
Yes.
gains from this big conflict. And okay, for him, Poland was just a card to play
Yes.
for his strategic
He
goals.
manipulated Mikołajczyk and the Polish government in exile, didn't he?
Yeah. But from him, we were part of the huge solution, which led the road for the American position of one and only superpower in the world.
So when you, as a Polish historian, meet with your American counterparts, are these competing viewpoints understood by historians examining the Second World War, or do you still
once again depends
retreat?
with whom you are speaking? Actually,
Okay.
some people understand the situation of East Central Europe, and actually they understand more and more, also due to the to the work of the institution like IPN, not only
Yep.
IPN, like Instytut Pileckiego, I don't know, other Polish institution, Polish academia, and we are simply trying to deliver our narrative, trying to explain our decision of our politicians. And actually nowadays also the historians from the general West, Anglo-Saxon world, simply they knew all the arguments about the West, but for them those stories from East Central Europe are relatively new. They can find something which is not known to their readers already. So maybe this is also the chance for us to find our sphere in this discussion.
Is that something that you as
our idea of the problems?
Yes. Is that something that you as a historian, you as a Polish historian, found out after 1990, or is this one of these? The Polish version of history, was that manipulated? That was surely manipulated by the communist perspective after 1945, and was it this explosion of knowledge and research, academia?
Yes, but
after 1989.
yes, there are many reasons of that, and effects in sense of the change of the situation in East Central Europe after the collapse of the communists. This opening of the archives, access to the archives, also to archives of the former secret services, but also it was more or less the same time when, for example, the British archives, which are actually opened after 30 years mostly, and sometimes after 50 or 100, it depends which actual documents, but still we can see the discussions and problems from both sides, from Polish side, from British, even from Soviet side. Now the Russians are closing back the archives, but just after the collapse of the communists, actually the archives were actually quite open for researchers who can afford to go to Moscow and spend time in the archives there. So we actually now, certainly there are still problems with access to some categories of documents, but most of the biggest bulk of this documentation is accessible, and now we can explain and understand the reasons why Mikołajczyk did that or Stalin did that.
A final question to you, Professor. It's 80 years since the war ended, or 1945. Why is it continuing to dominate our culture, pop culture?
Okay, but because it's still important, I don't know.
Why is it important in a way that, for example, the First World War doesn't seem to be?
Okay, this also might be a question of discussion, because there are films that are going back to the First World War, and but maybe still the Second World War is closer to us, and it was the bigger event which influenced the fate of more people, especially in Poland, and we have this situation. I also experienced it myself. So I come from the family. My mother, for example, was war orphan. So this is the problem of my family too. And for my father went for whole the war to Siberia, and thanks God he came back to Poland after the war. So this is not only theoretical story for us. We can read books. This is something I remember in my father's and mother's and talk on every day.
Yes.
Because I was born 20 years after the war ended.
Yes, it's still very living then, wasn't it? Professor Bułhak, we must end it there, but thank you very much for coming onto the programme.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So that's all we have time for today. Join us next time, new time, September. So that's Tuesdays, 21:35, 35 minutes past 9 p.m. CET. Join us then.